Hey everybody, it's Saturday night and we're going to do sort of a little mini trip around the world here. I guess I should have probably turned out the light over the waterfall tank before we got started. Let me go ahead and do that now. And we can turn that back on once we get around to it. So it's not really going to be a real around the world update. I just kind of popped my head in and I thought I would shoot some video while I was in here. We're going to walk around, see what we can see, and just have a little chat in general. I've been focused on other stuff today. I tend to get, if you haven't noticed, if you follow along with my channel, I tend to get really intensely focused on projects when I get to working on something or I get some new little fancy that I'm struck with. And lately I've been tinkering around with little homemade LED panels, and I've been taking apart lights that I've been buying at the Walmart and the Home Depot. And I'm probably going to wind up doing something with the Waterfall tank. I'm just not sure yet. The couple of little prototype things I've made will work well for some odds and ends. I'm always tinkering with something around the house. I've always got some seeds getting started somewhere, something I'm bringing in or taking out. So I'll be able to use that stuff. It's just a matter of what I'm going to wind up doing for the waterfall tank, because that's something I'm going to want to look really nice. So at any rate, the point is I've been really just kind of obsessively tinkering with that kind of stuff, and now it's Saturday night and I just got around to feeding everybody and I've hardly even looked in the tank, so I thought I would just take a walk around and show everybody the tanks. Nothing really new going on here in the 29. Loving that little ram in there. He looks fantastic, fits right in. He's the right size for this tank. It makes it look like he's got lots of room, but it's only a 29-gallon tank, so awesome little fish. I'm really happy about that. And it is still young. It is still small. It's going to get considerably bigger than that. But when I say considerably bigger, I'm talking about maybe roughly the size of that large skirt tetra you can see back there. Maybe this one here, if you count the tail and everything. Oblivion rams don't get very big. Maybe 3 inches or something if you really kind of count part of the tail a little bit. Again, going to look really good in here as it grows up. My Grammie tank still looks really good. The stuff is starting to grow back a little bit, so I might do another blackout for a few days now that the tank's had time to recover from the last one, and that will probably knock out the little bit of green growth that's starting to come back. I might even hit it with another treatment of ChemiClean. Never hurts to do that. Put a little polish on everything in there. Otherwise, just ticking over. I have not been putting any algae wafers in the tank. I've been putting shrimp pellets in there that sink to the bottom so that my Raphael can get some food. But I have not been putting the sinking algae wafers in there like I used to, and it's kind of forcing some of my algae eaters. There's one of them now. Technically that's an all-flux grazer, not an algae eater. But that is my rubber lip pleco, and I've got a Hillstream loach in here somewhere. And you can see the work they've been making on that rock right there. So I'm going to leave them to it and let them keep on working on it. I do have to kind of replace my floating Java Windelov. I believe I had that tucked in down here. And then I've also got, I can see some fern is stuck to the filter intake back there. And that I believe I had tucked in down between that rock and the piece of wood. And I'm not even sure what kind of fern it is. I know it's some species of Java, but that doesn't say a lot. There's 100 species of Java out there. So my T-bar tank is just ticking over. This one really needs some maintenance. I haven't gotten in here in a while, even since the last video I shot when I said I needed to get in here. A lot of those dead leaves have just decayed till they're almost gone now, and yet you can still see I do have quite a bit of dead, decaying leaves and whatnot. I can only imagine what the nitrates in this tank are right now with all that vegetation that's breaking down. My Nubius is probably going to need to be getting cut back soon. Don't forget, if you want aquatic plants, look down below and you will see my email. Hit me up. I do a flat rate of $22, and that's usually like 2 quart size baggies full of whatever you want, plus whatever I've got lying around. It's usually a bunch of water Sprite. I throw some Java in there. I always mix it up. Everybody that's gotten it, except for 1 or 2 occasions where the weather was nasty and everything showed up all manky from being frozen. Otherwise, everybody's always happy with the amount they get. So again, if you're interested in aquatic plants, I will be snipping some of this Anubias down here at some point. You can see I've got a whole new branch starting off over here coming out. And we've even got a flower starting on that one already. This one's actually growing up and out of the water to some degree. So definitely time to get in there. Although now that I'm looking at it, oh no, I'm sorry, that's just a new leaf unfurling. I was going to say if that's a flower coming up out of the water, maybe we'll let it do its thing and we can see what it looks like, because it doesn't fully flower submerged. It actually has to come up out of the water and grow emergent in order for the flower to fully open. You will see the flower develop, but it won't actually open. My 40-gallon Black Ghost Knifefish tank. This one looks okay in the sense that the cyanobacteria and all that growth is gone, but the green hair algae is back with a vengeance, or maybe it never went away. The ChemiClean doesn't really do anything to that hair algae, and there's not a lot of fish that eat it. Siamese algae eaters, I believe, will eat it, but I don't have any in this tank, and I'm going to have to go get some. I do have some in this tank, and it's actually been suggested, which isn't a bad idea, to collect them out of there and just move them around from tank to tank as needed. But I don't really roll that way. I'm not going to use them as like a workforce. That's their home. They live in that tank, and they're going to do their thing in that tank. If I want some Siamese algae eaters over here, then I'll get some Siamese algae eaters over here. But you can see the rubber lip plecos that I have in here are keeping the rocks very clean. It's hard to tell through the glass because the glass has so much stuff growing on it, but the rocks are shiny clean. It's just everything else in there that's starting to get that hair algae growing all over it again. So we'll get in there and do something. I'll figure something out. Maybe I'll put some live bears or something in there. I've always got guppies and neon swordtails and stuff like that I could throw in there. I believe they will eat it too. Those are true algae eating fish. They don't scrape the surface of anything, but they do eat algae all day long, and so that might reduce the hair algae in there. So moving on to my native tank, and we zoom right in on a non-native fish. We don't see this one very often anymore. This is my Chinese algae eater. Unpleasant little fish, but it's in there. I've had it forever. After it killed my angelfish, I moved it into this tank, and it's just been in this tank ever since. But you can see how clean everything is scraped in here. The wood is scoured. I mean, the bark is actually removed off the wood. You can see scrape marks in it, and of course all the rocks are nice and clean. But I've got a big pleco in here, just like we saw in my T-bar tank hanging on the glass. We've got that sailfin pleco or whatever it is in there, and then of course we've got that Chinese algae eater back there, which just does that all day long and just scrapes and scours and cleans when it's not harassing the other fish and trying to get their slime coat, you know, and get some good old juicy meaty protein off of the other fish. So I try to put you know, meaty stuff in this tank so that the Chinese algae eater gets plenty, and it tends to leave my other fish alone as a result, and so it's just in here, and it's always still been in here. So I also had somebody the other day ask me why the fish in this tank all just sort of stack up like that and face the same direction like they're waiting for something. And it may seem kind of obvious to some people, but if you don't know, it is because these are all river or stream fish, and this is natural behavior for them. I have a lot of water current in this tank. You can see that big power head in the back. Well, that's creating a pseudo vortex. You know, I know it's hard to get a vortex in a big rectangular box of water, but the water on the forward glass is moving this way, and the water on the back glass is moving that way. So you'll see the fish doing laps going this way down the back and then facing into the current here. So when they're all stacked up like that and they're just sitting there, they're doing what they would do in nature. They're just conserving energy. They're just kind of hanging out in the current. They're waiting for food to drift by. And I guarantee if something went floating by up here, these fish would dart up and hit it, and then, you know, and then go right back and then take up position again and just wait for something to come by. That's just a normal, natural behavior. Why go hunting for food when you can just hang out and let the current bring it to you? So that's what they're doing, if you wondered. Snail tank's a snail tank. Not even going to bother talking about that one. My purple spotted gudgeon tank, I don't know where he was tonight. He was being contrary. I tried to feed him and I couldn't find him, and so I bypassed this tank. And last night I was actually so wrapped up in working on my little lighting projects. I shot a video about it, but I never even fed everybody in here, which is okay. Everybody got a fast day, and a fast day once in a while is no big deal. But when my fish get a fast day, it's literally because I forget to feed them sometimes, and I did yesterday. It wasn't until about 11 o'clock at night when I realized it was 11 o'clock at night. You know, I came out of my little zone of working on stuff, and it was 11 o'clock, so I just came in and turned all the lights out, and that was it. So this tank never got the water change it needed yesterday. It's obviously not getting it tonight because it's already pushing 9 o'clock and lights are going to be going out in about an hour, so I'm not going to get started on working on the tank right now. But the treatment is done. The bubbles are in here because I've got the ChemiClean going, and when you use that ChemiClean, it oxidizes the growth in the tank, all the stuff you're trying to kill. It kills it by oxidizing it. In fact, if you look really closely, you can see how that thick mat of green has sort of separated from the leaf. If I touch that or rubbed it, which I will be doing with the siphon hose, that will break off and come loose and just get removed right out of the tank, and it'll be a nice green, you know, it'll look like this underneath, or it'll look like that underneath. This is pieces where it's already broken off. And if you look closely and you look around, you'll see that it's like that quite a bit. So that will be my first treatment. I usually do a back-to-back treatment. It's been in there for, this makes 3 days now. Again, I should have drained it, done a water change yesterday, but it's not hurting anything by not doing the water change, so I'm not worried about it. Tomorrow it'll get a water change. When I fill it back up, we'll put another dose of the ChemiClean in there, give it another couple days with the air bubbles. Again, the air bubbles are really important. You got to keep that gas exchange going because of the oxidation process. It will suck all the oxygen right out of the tank. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to vac this stuff out without losing too much sand. This sand is really fine, and even with a gravel vac, I tend to lose a lot of it, and I don't really like running that down my drain either. That's not exactly good for my plumbing. Moving on, looking at my 125 here. I said this wasn't going to be a real round-the-world update, but it kind of is turning out to be. You can see my Tanapoma hanging out right there. I shot a video a little while ago when I popped my head in, and we had a look at my chocolate zebra pleco, or at least one of my chocolate zebra plecos that was up inside the knot hole in that piece of wood, and its tail's further out now than it was earlier, but it's still in there. So it's only been maybe an hour since I shot that other video. It's not like I'm concerned about it. It hasn't had time. I haven't fed the tank or done anything since then, so no biggie, but it is still in there. And then nothing else really that I can think of going on in this tank. It's probably due for another good glass cleaning, and we've got more of that green fuzzy kind of stuff growing in here. It's been a while since I've treated this tank with the ChemiClean, and I have several tanks that have to get it at least once or twice a year for some reason. I have tanks that just never seem to really get the growth in them. Not really sure why some get it and some don't. Not real, you know, not a big deal. It's just part of the tank maintenance on this tank. So, you know, soon we'll be doing some ChemiClean treatment on this tank and so on and so forth. But other than that, not a lot to talk about in here. The red-tailed shark, I will mention, or I'm sorry, the rainbow shark. It's not a red-tail, it's a rainbow shark. That is settling in quite nicely in here. It's cruising all over the tank. It's harassing the other fish, chasing everybody around. So again, a lot of attitude for such a small fish. I'm no longer concerned about the shark's safety. I'm actually more concerned about the shark harassing some of the other fish, but you can see by their size that I don't think any of these other fish are too worried about that little shark just yet. So we'll see how that plays out over time. My little 20-gallon Angelfish tank, nothing really to speak of in here. The last round the world update I did, I discovered that I had a little baby cherry barb in there. So still no idea whether it's male or female. And you already had your dinner tonight, so stop acting like you're going to get something if you dance for me. So nothing really going on in my Angelfish tank. My filthy, gross, nasty quarantine tank. I'm getting distracted by the loach here. I wasn't even going to mention this tank, but that loach is doing its thing. I still have 2 coolie loaches in this tank. They've been in there forever.
well, I say forever, I don't know, it's probably been a year now. They've just proved too difficult to get out, and I just never bothered with it, and so they've just kind of live in this tank along with those two little guppies you see swimming around. Now, I did have a Bolivian ram in this tank, and I didn't see it yesterday when I looked for it, and I looked for it earlier today, and I did not see it in here either. And it looked pretty peaked and sickly. It had been bullied by the other one, the one we just looked at the beginning of this video in my 29. So it may not have survived, and it may have just, I mean, it was not much fish left anyway. It was very thin and wispy. So if it died, it could have rotted away by now or gotten devoured by the loaches in the middle of the night. It may be hiding in a cave. I don't know. It may turn out that I see it swimming around in there tomorrow. But so far this evening, I have not seen that Bolivian ram, so I think it's probably gone. The other two look fine. The one that's in my office tank upstairs looks good. And, of course, we just saw the one in the 29 when we started this video. So my brackish tank, still haven't done anything to this one either. Again, you know, I've been wrapped up doing other stuff and haven't really been paying a lot of attention to what's been going on in here. I will say that I've noticed that I think Butterbean is starting to look better. If you're a regular viewer, you'll know that I was concerned for a while about the white marks that were starting to develop on him, and I was never really sure what they were. I'm still not. And they were spreading around. It almost looked like something was chewing on him or something, leaving like scrape marks on his skin. They didn't look like, they certainly weren't ick. Ick couldn't survive in this tank anyway with the amount of salt that's in the water. This is a brackish tank. But it wasn't hole in the head, or at least I didn't think it was hole in the head. I suppose that was a possibility. But it seems like the lesions, or whatever they were, are subsiding. They don't seem as pronounced as they were before. And in fact, in a lot of areas, you don't really notice them at all anymore. So I don't know what that was. I don't really know what was going on with that. You can see I haven't gotten really hypercritical about staying on top of tank maintenance or anything. I don't even remember the last time we did a water change on this tank. It's been quite a while. Now, I'll grant you there's not a huge bioload in this tank, but there's probably more than you think. If you've ever seen one of my feeding videos where I throw snails in the tank for Butterbean, and I mean, you can see the snail graveyard right there. That's a lot of meat getting thrown in this tank every day for Butterbean, because that's about what I feed him normally. That's not, I don't do that special for those videos. That's what he gets every day. He gets a handful of snails, and a lot of times we'll get freeze-dried krill in addition to that. That's what that white thing on the back there is. That is a freeze-dried krill that sank to the bottom and never got eaten. So hopefully the bumblebee gobies in here might nibble on it, or the two sailfin mollies, these orange sailfin mollies, might nibble on them too, because they have to get fed, and they get fed separately. A lot of times they'll just get a little bit of ground up. I'll crumble up the krill. You know, any krill that they eat, any shrimp pellets that they eat is going to help with that orange color and really make them pop. The krill helps with any of those oranges and reds. It's the keratin in there. We'll do that as a keratin or keratin. I think it's keratin that makes them orange like that. At any rate, I make sure they get plenty of shrimp. And then, of course, about 2 or 3 times a week, I do crumble up actual flake fish food for the other fish in this tank, in addition to Butterbean. And then, of course, they all get Butterbean's leftovers, and the live bears are algae eaters. So they get to nibble on all the algae that's growing in the tank all day long, too, and they get food that way. So we're back to the 29. We're not even at 20 minutes, so even though we hit just about every tank, that was still pretty fast for one of my videos, at least one of my Around the World updates. So we can have a quick look at the blinding waterfall tank here. I've got a spotlight that I shine up there so that my dead nettles get a little bit of light. This part of the dead nettles gets a lot of light, and I guess once enough of the plant gets down into the light, then I can stop worrying so much about the spotlight. But for now, where the main body of the plant is rooted in up here, I want to make sure that's getting light. And you can see how it's still growing up. And then eventually, as they get long enough, they'll fall over and they'll wind up doing this. And I'm hoping to get enough of a cascade going there that we can permanently sort of hide that broken end of that branch. That thing was the bane of my existence for a while. I hated the sight of that broken branch there, and now it's not so visible, so I'm a little bit happier about that.
All in all, I got to do something with this tank. I think it's really overlit. I'm not going to get into a big discussion about light and lighting right now, but the light that's on here is a lot of light, and considering how long it stays on all day, while it can't compare to natural sunlight, you know, it's never obscured by clouds. There's a shout out to my Pink Floyd fans out there. It's never obscured by clouds. It's never a rainy day down here. It's you know, 12 to 15 hours a day. This just has photons pounding on it. And just about everything in here is a low light sort of plant. I'm really surprised the philodendron is doing as well as it is. These sort of arrowhead shaped leaves, which is usually a creeping, crawling sort of plant. You can see how dense it is. That's because it's getting so much light. It's not growing all wispy like that, you know, long and traily, because it's getting a lot of light. But that could grow well enough in an office building, you know, just with the overhead fluorescent lighting would keep that plant alive. That's how little lighting that could survive on, and yet here I've got it under this all day long. So I wound up recently taking the water sprite that I had growing out of here. Water sprite is actually a species of Indian fern, and it does just fine outside the water. It's not an aquatic plant per se. It will grow underwater, but it grows even better above the water. In my case, however, it was just covered in aphids, and I could not get the aphids off of it. I tried spraying it with hydrogen peroxide, and I overdid it, and the plant was half dead from the hydrogen peroxide, plus it still had aphids all over it, and it was just getting out of control bushy, and so I just pulled the whole thing out. And now we've got some visible rocks, and we've got some Java Windelov that I'm hoping will sort of root in. It's probably going to dry up a little bit because it's, you know, it's just been pulled out of a bucket of water, and now it's just, you know, the roots are the only thing that are actually in the water anymore. So hopefully that will root in and we'll get some new growth coming off of that. Maybe the Java back here will start looking better and growing in. Not really sure what's going to happen with this side. Maybe I'll try to get some more sun-loving plants and get them in there. I've got some setup going on in the other room with some grow lights where I'm getting some seeds started. I just planted some salvia, so we've got some purple salvia planted. I don't know if they're going to come up yet. I did plant them. We'll see what happens. I've got some petunias coming up in the other room, so maybe we can get some petunias in there, maybe get a little bit of a cascade effect. We can put them up here where it's a little more dry, and then have some petunias hanging down or something, create a little cave back there. I don't know. Summertime's coming up. I'm getting excited. We're starting to see some flowers out in the yard. Some bulbs are finally starting to come up, and hopefully we'll be able to start translating a little bit of that into here and getting a little bit more of a springtimey sort of look going on the waterfall tank. So make sure you subscribe. You never know what you're going to get with me. A lot of times you'll get these little spur of the moment videos, and then that's a big surprise for everybody. So if you like this kind of video, make sure you subscribe. That way you won't miss any more. And then don't forget, of course, this one is my waterfall tank. So thanks again for watching. See you real soon in the next one.